Show you some clips of that if you're watching this broadcast. Truly bizarre. We're going to talk about the double standard that exists in not only free speech, but in terms of our government protecting us from force. Of course, that is abundantly clear, but there's some new articles that come out on that. We're going to talk about what's going on Brexit. The globalist elitists are starting to panic there. They're making incredibly ridiculous claims, and as a result, the Leave people have now taken the lead, and I think it's the first time I've seen that happen. We're going to talk as well about this. I had a lot on my plate when I came in, and then I got this from our news producer, Nico. Shows me an article from Salon, says Donald Trump uses Alex Jones as an actual news source. We're going to tell you what story they came up with this, and we're going to show you with this particular article why nobody uses Salon as a news source, because it's just a hit-and-run piece. We're going to show you what Donald Trump was talking about. We're going to go over briefly where this has happened in the past, and then finally, we're going to talk about the outbreak that we're seeing of tuberculosis. You know, there are consequences to having an open border. There are economic consequences, there are health consequences, there are terrorism and crime consequences to having an open border where you don't vet anyone. We have multiple stories about what's going on. There's a story that's up on the Drudge Report about how Homeland Security is escorting people in who are other than Mexican. That's the special nomenclature. They get special treatment. They get moved in because I guess if you're Mexican under the North American Union, you know, you just get, you don't get treated quite as well as people who are outside the North American Union. But we're going to talk about how tuberculosis is now being brought in by the open borders of Barack Obama and, of course, Hillary Clinton. Maybe we could call Hillary Clinton Typhoid Hillary. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this Sunday, June 5th, 2016. I'm David Knight, your host. We've got a lot of news to cover, some really bizarre stuff coming out of Switzerland. Of course, they've rejected Bernieomics. I mentioned that at the end of the last segment. We're going to talk about what they have in terms of citizenship requirements. You won't believe it, but there's also this really incredibly bizarre satanic ceremony that they had to open up a railroad tunnel that happened on June 1st, 2016. You know, the Satanists put a lot of stock in 666. We got the article that's up on the Drudge Report about how Satanists in L.A. are going to stake out a big pentagram, and they're going to do it on June 6th, 2016, 6/6/16. Well, it kind of did the same thing in Switzerland as well. So we're going to get into some Swiss news, interestingly enough, also some Brexit news, because that really closely parallels what's going on in this country in terms of nationalism versus globalism. I want to put a bookend on what Alex and Roger Stone were talking about with the Hispanic judge who is presiding over this Trump University case. I mean, the very fact that this guy would dump all this information out, all this correspondence at the beginning of the trial for the media, that tells you a little bit about his bias, even if you didn't know that he was a member of La Raza. So the question is La Raza an Hispanic Ku Klux Klan? I believe it is. And you know what? So did Cesar Chavez. He believed it was an Hispanic Ku Klux Klan. I'm going to read you some quotes about that. We've got Salon attacking Alex Jones and Donald Trump again, you know, using Alex Jones to attack Donald Trump. We're going to give you the breakdown on that. Before we get into the news, however, I want to let you know about our new product that we have in an introductory special. That is Alexa Pure Breeze. This is a way to purify the air in your home, because one of the things that we talked for a long time about how essential it is to purify your drinking water. You have to have water on a continuing basis, right? You have to have water. You can't go as long without water as you can go without food, and you can't, of course, go as long without air as you can with water. So you want to make sure that your household air is clean. And of course, in any house, most of our houses are locked up very tightly in order to save money for heating or cooling. That means that if we have any chemicals that get in our house, that stays there unless you do something to get it out. So you can pollute your own home, or you can clean your own home. So we have a special right now, 25% off, an incredible introductory sale for Alexa Pure Breeze. Now, this is easy to clean and maintain. It has a silent mode at 16 decibels. It's quieter even than a whisper, which is rated at 30 decibels. It's perfect for rooms up to 800 square feet. It's a 4-stage purification process, gives you superior air quality, and the final byproduct is clean water, not ozone. So check that out at InfoWarsStore.com. That's the Alexa Pure Breeze, our new product with a 25% discount for the introductory sale. And before I go to this other news, as I said, let me put bookends on what Alex and Roger were talking about in terms of Trump saying that this judge who has a Mexican heritage is biased against him. And it isn't because he simply has an Hispanic heritage. It's because of his connections with La Raza. And I want to read you what Cesar Chavez said about La Raza. He said, I hear more and more Mexicans talking about La Raza to build up their pride. Well, some people don't look at it as racism, but when you say La Raza, you are saying an anti-gringo thing, and it won't stop there. Today it's anti-gringo, tomorrow will be anti-Negro. We had a stupid guy who just wanted to play politics in the union, and he began to whip up La Raza against the white volunteers. Even had some of the farm workers and the pickets and their organizers hung up on La Raza. So I took him on. These things have to be met head on. On discrimination, I don't even give the members the privilege of a vote, and I'm not ashamed of that. No, the whole business of discrimination can't exist here. So often these days, leaders are afraid, and even though they feel strongly against racism, they will not speak out against it. If the leadership is united, then it can say, all right, if you're going to do things that way, then you'll have to get rid of us. You have to speak out immediately. You have to speak out the first time. That's Cesar Chavez, the Hispanic union organizer, talking about La Raza. It is the KKK. For Hispanics, it is nothing but racism. It is Spanish for the race. So when you've got a lawyer, a judge, who is part of La Raza lawyers, okay, that says that he's got some issues. Says that he can't be unbiased in a case where you've got a presidential candidate that is saying we want to control immigration, because La Raza doesn't want to control immigration. They want to control America, Southwestern America, specifically on the grounds of race. Now, I want to read you something else. A friend of his, Leroy Chatfield, said that's one of the reasons that Chavez was so upset about La Raza. The same Mexicans that 10 years ago were talking about themselves as Spaniards are coming on real strong these days as Mexicans. Another friend quoted Chavez as saying, La Raza, why be racist? He said, our belief is to help everyone, not just one race. Humanity is our belief, said Hugo Chavez. And he noted, said another friend, Stan Steiner, he observed that when Chavez told Chicanos this, he said their faces fell in disbelief. They thought that he was a nationalist and not a humanist. Do you understand? They thought he was a nationalist. La Raza is a nationalist movement. That's why when you go to these dreamer riots, you've got these young kids out there screaming about La Raza, screaming about Aztlan, waving Mexican flags and burning American flags because it is a nationalist movement. It is not a humanist movement. It is not a civil rights movement. It is a form of nationalism. It is their nation against our nation, quite frankly. Now, when we look at this situation, of course, as we pointed out, this Judge Curiel is a member of La Raza Lawyers of San Diego. Does that make him biased? Well, Newt Gingrich thinks that Donald Trump missed the boat on this. He said on Sunday, he said, this is the worst mistake Donald Trump has made, said Newt Gingrich. He said, I think it's inexcusable. Now, Trump said that his Mexican heritage was an absolute conflict. In other words, he's a La Raza activist who defines himself by his Mexican heritage. And, of course, that's going to make him biased against Donald Trump because the way the media has spun this, saying that he doesn't want anybody to come. He's not saying that he wants to shut out all people of a particular type. He said we need to get control of our borders. We need to know who is coming in. And I think it's interesting to see Newt Gingrich here because we've had a lot of talk. Was Gingrich saying nice things about Donald Trump? Gingrich meeting with Donald Trump? Is he's going to take control of Donald Trump? Because I think Gingrich is a stalking horse for the globalists. I really do. This guy has always been part of the GOP establishment that wants to push globalism in the name of free trade. So I find it interesting that Gingrich is now coming out and pushing back against Trump. Is it because he feels that he's not getting what he wants from Donald Trump? Is he not finding Donald Trump as malleable as a globalist would like him to be? Maybe. Hopefully so. He goes on, he slammed Trump for his comments, Gingrich did, noting that the judge was born in Indiana. Well, you know what? That doesn't mean that he doesn't have biases, that he isn't prejudiced. You have to look at what he does, the organizations that he's in, not simply where he was born. Newt. Okay, he says, when you come to America, listen to what Newt Gingrich said. When you come to America, you get to become an American. Okay, tell me he's not for unrestricted open borders, okay? That's a quote from Newt Gingrich. When you come, he is an American, period. When you come to America, you get to become an American. So we got an anchor judge. His parents came here. I don't know if they came here legally or illegally. They were from Mexico. He was born in America, so I guess he's an anchor judge, and we need to just shut up. He can't possibly be biased. Well, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales says that Donald Trump is right to challenge the fairness of a judge. Here's a guy who is Hispanic, and he says this. His former U.S. Attorney General of the United States, said, as someone whose own ancestors came to the U.S. from Mexico, I know ethnicity alone cannot pose a conflict of interest, but there may be other factors to consider in determining whether Trump's concerns about getting an impartial trial are reasonable. Gonzales said Curiel is a member of La Raza Lawyers of San Diego. He says it's a national group that vociferously opposes Trump. But, of course, the Washington Post said, no, they're unaffiliated. So I guess that means that we just have to go with whatever the Washington Post says. Forget what Alberto Gonzales says. Forget what Cesar Chavez said about La Raza. That's not a problem. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this Sunday, June 5th, 2016. I'm David Knight, your host. I want to talk about Salon attacking Donald Trump by attaching him to Alex Jones and InfoWars. This is a headline here. Donald Trump uses Alex Jones as an actual news source. I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to explain to you why nobody uses Salon as an actual news source, okay? And this is a common technique. We saw this just a couple of months ago. Remember in the debate where Donald Trump came out and said, you know what, I'd like to see those 28 pages declassified. At the time that happened in the debate, the very next day, National Review came out and said, Donald Trump has gone full Alex Jones caller. That was the way they began their article. Donald Trump sounds like an Alex Jones caller. It's a crazy conspiracy that there's somehow 28 pages missing out of the 9/11 report that have been totally redacted, and they won't let anybody see it. Well, it just so happens, as people start to look at this, they realize that, yes, that is true. And we have people, Democrats and Republicans, who are on the 9/11 Commission said we want that information out there. Saudi Arabia is mentioned repeatedly in here, and yet we're not allowed to give this information to the public. And we've been talking about this for a very long time. They were right. It is something that Alex Jones carried the ball on. Where are these missing 28 pages? And look, I understand. Those of you who have been looking at the 9/11 report, you understand that this is a bunch of nonsense, okay? But let's start unraveling it. Let's get people to understand how they have covered this up. And we've already seen the narrative begin to unravel as people said, hey, we want to see that. If the Saudis were genuinely involved in this, as your report says, and we ought to be able to do something about it. There ought to be some punishment, financial or otherwise, for the people involved in this. Why are we giving the Saudis a free pass on this? So that came out. But that was something that they attacked Donald Trump, saying he's an Alex Jones caller for even bringing this subject up. Now we've legitimized it. We've had 60 Minutes finally do a report on it after these senators and congressmen have been talking about this for 15 years. After we've been talking about this for 15 years, then finally we've got 60 Minutes talking about it. We've got Congress passing a bill, which, and of course, they've gutted that. That's also a head fake. Nevertheless, it has brought this up. It's got people looking at it. And they tried to attack Donald Trump by attaching him to us. Then, of course, remember there was the situation with all the massive ammunition purchases of Homeland Security and others. They said we were crazy conspiracy theorists, even though Paul Joseph Watson, who broke that story, showed the purchase orders that were on the web. That's what started the inquiry into this. What are they doing? Why are they buying so much ammunition? Why are they buying that kind of ammunition? It's not simply for target practice. As we pointed out, it was a quantity of ammunition that was several years worth of the Iraq War at its highest level. It was a massive quantity of ammunition. So they come back and they would take one of the smaller purchases by one organization and say, look, this is nothing. This is just for target practice. And yet,